Everyone, I'm back after a 1 week hiatus, and I'm back with more Anki. So at this time point, there's about 3 months, or a little less than 3 months until my January test date. So I switched over from rebobeppopopop's Anki deck, which is the one I did last time, and I got through most of them. I'm missing like a chapter or so, but I just decided to move on to MD's Anki cards, which are a lot faster to get through. I did it yesterday and got through about 700 cards in 120 minutes or so. So it's pretty fast, mainly because it's just closed deletion. But let's get started. Thyroid stimulating hormone stimulates the thyroid to produce thyroxine and trioxine, which is stimulate metallic. TSH is created from the anterior pituitary. Thyroid stimulating hormone released from the anterior pituitary. Cardiac muscle cells are connected with intercalate disc that contains gap junctions. These in the neck below the atoms increase T3 and T4 hormones regulate metabolism. Thyroid gland. Cell bodies and dendrites unmyelinated make up the gray matter of the brain. Given the cardiac output equation, cardiac output equals heart rate times stroke volume. Give the rays, the signal and signal can be determinated. I don't know this one. Breakdown by enzymes, reuptake by presynaptic neuron, diffusion out the cleft. A is a junction between two nerve cells, synapse. The two important proteins in sarcomere are which are formed thick filament and which form the thin filament. Are myosin, which form the thick filament, and actin, which form the thin filament. Myosin is thick, actin is thin. Is released by mast cells and causes blood vessels to dilate, increasing blood flow and cell trafficking to an area of infection. Histamine is released by the thyroid gland and builds bone. I think it's growth factor. Calcitonin increases calcium in the bone, increases calcium nutrition, decreases calcium in the blood, decreases calcium absorption in the blood, increased calcium concentration in the bone and kidneys. Calcitonin is a mammalian receptor that transfers a signal from outside a cell to the inside of a cell. GPCR, G protein coupled receptors. The closer together or farther apart two alleles are understanding more likely to sort independently. The farther apart is a term used to describe mutation on the antigen binding site of an antibody, hypermutation, conforming different isoforms with different affinities to an antigen. Hypermutation. Get three-way signals in the synapse can be terminated. Breakdown by enzymes, reuptake by the presynaptic neuron, or diffusion out of the cleft. Is a difference between minimum and maximum volume of this tidal capacity. It's the maximum of air you can exhale once you completely inhale. Two of the most important proteins in sarcomere are myosin. Myosin is the thick filament, and actin, actin is the thin filament. That's a good one, huh? Actin. It's a really good one. Actin. Is released by the thyroid gland, builds bone. Calcitonin increases calcium in the kidneys and in the bones. Cooperative binding. The amplitude of action potential is independent of the amount of current that produces it. Adaptive immunity are defenses that are specific to the invader, such as cell-mediated immune response and humoral response. Cell-mediated immune response and humoral immune response. Gotta remember that. Is a physical breakdown of large food molecules, so mechanical digestion. Fraternal twins are dizygotic. Response to antigen MCH1 and kill viral infected cells. Cytotoxic T cells. They inject these, I think they're called. They basically kill virally infected cells by injecting, something that breaks apart the cell wall. Yeah, close enough. There's a period of time between conception and birth. Gestation. Are glands that produce gamete sex cells and sex hormones. gonads. That's the one. CO2 and H will trigger the heme group to, I think it's increase its affinity. Oh, to release. Allosterically inhibits hemoglobin. This means O2 is released near lots of CO2, which is where. Okay, I gotta read this. CO2 and H plus will trigger the heme group to release its O2, because carbon dioxide and hydrogen allosterically inhibit hemoglobin. This means O2 is released near lots of CO2 in a certain state. Starting in O2 is needed. Blood temperature. Blood carbon dioxide higher, CO2 concentration. 70 for the large. I see. Okay. Adaptive immunity are defenses that are specific to the invader. Adaptive includes sub-mediated response and humoral response. Is a period of time between conception and birth, gestation. The colon is falling 4 segments. Ascending, transversal, descending, and then was it the sigmoid. The blood protein produced in response to a specific antigen. Blood protein? Antibody, it knows blood protein. Hormones are primary sex cell hormones, anabolic steroid, testosterone. Secreting the adrenal cortex. Keep forgetting that. Producing the adrenal cortex. Steroid that can act as a hormone. Steroid hormone. Derived from lipids, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. During exhalation, the diaphragm muscle will relax, which decreases or increases the pressure, decreases the volume. CO2 and H plus will trigger the heme group to release its O2 because CO2 and H plus allosterically inhibit the hemoglobin. So in areas where there's high concentration of CO2 and H plus, the hemoglobin will have lower affinity to oxygen and will release its oxygen. Red blood cells are known as erythrocytes. Very small blood vessels that bring blood from the capillary beds to the veins. Capillary beds to the veins. Venules. It's a blood protein produced in response to a antigen, antibody. The internal, in the external, it's made of cells, also under voluntary control. Primary male sex hormone is an anabolic steroid. Testosterone secreted from the adrenal cortex. A hormone is a steroid hormone, progesterone, testosterone, etc. In a bacteriophage life cycle, the virus DNA is embedded into the host DNA. In a also a retrovirus, the virus DNA is embedded into the host DNA. Was it? Oh, it's the it's not the lytic cycle. It's the not the lambda cycle. It's not the. It's the other one, not the lytic. It's the. I forgot it. Lysogenic cycle. Hormones of long effect and triggers spermatogenesis. Shows that human system is development of ovarian follicles. FSH, follicle stimulating hormone, triggers spermatogenesis. Secreted from the anterior pituitary. The male inhibitory neurotransmitter in the spinal cord is glycine. Gastrulation is a phase in early in the morning. Okay, I didn't press this right away. Gastrulation is a phase early in the embryonic development, and most embryos, which is singular blastula, is recognized into a gastrula. Enters a presynaptic cell and allows vesicle to neurotransmitters that diffuse with the axon terminal and membrane calcium. Fetal hemoglobin has a lower P50 because of its high affinity for oxygen. P50 is just the oxygen concentration, or the oxygen pressure when hemoglobin is 50% bound to oxygen. And fetal hemoglobin, the shift, has a left shift because of the higher affinity for oxygen. Aldosterone are hormones that stimulate the adrenal cortex in response to high blood pressure and angiotensin II. And it acts to secrete more salts into the blood pressure, which increases its osmolarity, so more water is going to rush into the blood, increasing blood pressure. Right? Oh, high K plus. Oh, aldosterone, right? Huh. High potassium. Damn it. Stem cells can develop into multipotent stem cells. In the phase early in the embryonic development of most animals, in which a single-layered blastula is reorganized into a multi-layered structure called the gastrula. Gastrulation. Blastula, gastrulation would be different layers. Pressure moves fluid out of capillary beds into the interstitial fluid. Was it No. It was oncotic pressure. Hydrostatic pressure moves it out into the interstitial fluid. Stimulates urinary contraction and breast milk production, among other function. Oxytocin. Secreted in the posterior pituitary. Vasodilation increases blood flow to the skin to help expel heat. White blood cells, leukocytes, come in 5 major types that are divided into the following 2 groups: granulocytes and agranulocytes. Granulocytes are the neutrophils, basically using the granulocytes and monocyte lymphocytes. Cool. Produces its elements of blood, including platelets, red blood cells, and white blood cells. Bone marrow. Enzyme and brush run breaks down aminopeptidase, I think. Yeah. Fills in the missing item. Nasal-oral cavity, pharynx, larynx, trachea, bronchi, bronchioles, alveoli. A is a membrane receptor that interacts with special protein called G protein coupled receptor. Cardiac muscle cells are connected with intercalated discs that contain gap junctions. Develops into the muscle skeleton, circulatory system, gonads, and adrenal cortex. So these are all like so this is the mesoderm. Pressure moves fluid out of the capillary into the fluid, hydrostatic pressure. When membrane potential is depolarized during an action potential, it reaches a peak of around 35 millivolts, 40. At the checkpoint, the cell will check the DNA has been replicated correctly. G2, SG2 checkpoint. G2 checkpoint. Cell bodies and dendrites, unmyelated, make up the white or gray matter of the brain. Leptin will decrease hunger. Makes viscous fluid. A bulbourethral gland makes viscous fluid gland urethra. Depolarization occurs when sodium ions flow in. Increasing charge to some result in the depolarization of cell membrane. Voltage closed. At resting membrane potential, the channel is closed. Open in response to a nerve impulse. The gate opens and sodium will rush into the cell. And for a brief moment, the channel does not open in response to news. That's called the refractory period. So here, threshold, sodium rushes in, so becomes positively charged. Then K plus flows outwards, which is called repolarization for a refractory period. And the NAK plus starts to reestablish the resting membrane potential. Give 3 ways to signal a signal between terror. So it can be degraded by the enzymes, it can diffuse or reuptake by the presynaptic neuron, or diffuse out of the cleft. The farther apart 2 alleles are on the same chromosome, the more likely they are to sort independently. The hormones are relatively small hormones from the tyrosine and tryptophan. These are the catecholamines and catecholamines, so amine hormones, I think. Yeah, catecholamines, thyroid hormones. Cool. In sickle cell anemia, the amino acid, I forgot, glutamine is replaced by valine. Hemoglobin aggregates into insoluble fibers. In sickle cell anemia, hemoglobin aggregates into insoluble fibers. Integrated sickle cell blocking blood flow. Amino acid glutamine is replaced by a valine. Okay. Thyroid is released calcitonin. And calcitonin increases calcium excretion by the kidneys and increases calcium absorption in the bone. 2 more important proteins in sarcomere are the myosin, which form the thick filament, and actin, which form the thin filament. The binding of oxygen to hemoglobin is cooperative. Binding one oxygen creates affinity for another oxygen. The first part of the lung and large intestine and is outpocketing except fluid from the small intestine. Cecum? Yeah. Are glands that produce gametes, sex cells, and sex hormones. Are glands that produce gametes, sex cells, and sex hormones. Gonads. Fraternal twins are dizygotic. Centrioles contain 9 groups of microtubules and they pull chromosomes apart during mitosis or meiosis. In sickle cell anemia, it means amino acid glutamine is replaced by valine, which causes this biconcave or concave shape, kind of like crescent moon shape, which causes clotting. Female egg pathway. We go from the female egg. We have her from the ovaries to the fallopian tube, to the uterus, to the cervix, to the vagina. That's if it's unfertilized. If it's fertilized, it goes into the uterus where it implants into the endometrium lining. It's a primary female sex hormone leads to development of secondary sexual characteristics. Estrogen, produced by the ovaries, regulates the menstrual cycle, decreases milk production. Estrogen establishes progesterone protects. So estrogen establishes the endometrium. Okay, I think we gotta memorize all this. Estrogen is the primary female ligature produced in the ovaries and establishes the endometrium. The colons of four segments. We have the ascending, transverse, descending, and sigmoid. It's a hollow tube that connects the larynx to the bronchi to the lungs. It's called the windpipe. Trachea. Larynx to the bronchi. Trachea. Myoglobin oxygen is hypobolic because it only contains one heme group and doesn't exhibit cooperative binding. The fat-soluble vitamins are CADE. They absorb through lacteals in the villi. Lacteals, gotta memorize that. CADE, fat-soluble, or CADE. CADE is fat. Lacteals in the villi. You have 2 layers of the dermis. We have the reticular layer and the reticular and the papillary layer. Adaptive immunity are defenses that are specific to the invader. Adaptive immunity, cell-mediated immune response, and humoral response. At a chemical interaction, triggers the perceptive neuron to release neurotransmitters into the synapse. It's the right atrium and the right ventricle. Let's see. Right atrium valve is called the lab, right? Left atrium tricuspid valve. And tricuspid valve, I think. Yeah, tricuspid valve. The oxygen passes through as expected. Hormones are primary sex and leads to secondary sex characteristics in females. That is estrogen. And estrogen regulates the menstrual cycle, and estrogen also establishes the endometrium. Is a period of time between conception and birth. This is gestation. CO2 and H+ will trigger the heme group to release its O2 because in environments where there's high concentration of CO2 and H+, they will allosterically inhibit the heme group and causing the heme group to have less affinity for oxygen and releasing the oxygen into an environment. And typically we find areas where there's lots of CO2 and H+ in tissues that really need oxygen, like muscles during exercise, so they really need the oxygen. Fat-soluble vitamins are vitamin K, vitamin K, A, D, E, and they're absorbed by lacteals in the villi. A hormone is a steroid that acts as a hormone. Steroid hormones, estrogen, progesterone, etc. In a lysogenic bacteriophage, virus DNA is medicine, host DNA. Whereas intracell medicine is host DNA indefinitely or it may switch to the lytic cycle. A very small blood vessel bringing blood from the capillary vein to the vein. Venules is a blood protein produced in response to a specific antigen, antibodies. Hormone is a primary male sex hormone and is an anabolic steroid. The primary male sex hormone and is an anabolic steroid. Testosterone secreted from the adrenal cortex. Interphase includes G1, SG2. They have follicles that produce ova. The ovaries have follicles that produce ova. A measure the volume of air being exhaled or inhaled. A spirometer. Aldosterone, it's a hormone in the cortex in response to angiotensin II or high potassium concentration, K+. Something with prolactin, released from the anterior pituitary. Release hormone related to stress, growth, reproduction, and lactation. The hypothalamus. Anterior pituitary. But the pituitary. Multipotent stem cells. There's also in lymphatic system overwhelm and can't drain excess fluid from the tissue, edema. Simulates urine contraction and breast milk production, among other functions. Oxytocin, secreted from the posterior pituitary. Urine pathway, so we go from the Bowman's capsule, proximal tubule, descending loop of Henle, ascending loop of Henle, distal convoluted tubule, collecting duct, ureter, or renal pelvis, ureter, bladder, urethra. Is a phase early in the embryonic development of most animals during which the single-layered blastula is recognized into a multi-layered structure known as the gastrula. Gastrulation. Measures the volume of air being exhaled, a spirometer. Hormone stimulates milk production, prolactin, which is secreted in the anterior pituitary. Activates cytotoxic T cells and macrophages to attack infected cells, or they stimulate B cells to secrete antibodies. Activate cytotoxic T cells and macrophages to attack infected cytokines. Helper T cells. Whoops. Produce a slayer of elements in blood, bone marrow. Outer is the epidermis, dermis, hypodermis, or subcutaneous layer. Vasodilation ingredient will skin help expel heat. The Na plus so pumps 3 Na plus out of the cell and 2 potassium into the cell using 1 ATP. The synthesized bile albumin and clotting factors. The liver synthesizes bile, albumin, and clotting factors. Blood, albumin, clotting factors. Hormones in the anterior pituitary to release thyroid releasing hormone from the hypothalamus. Thyrotropin releasing hormone. Whatever. Leptin will decrease hunger. Ghrelin will increase hunger. It's also called the voice box. The hollow tube is structure connected to the top of the trachea, the larynx. Give the hormone that are produced by the anterior pituitary gland. Oh God. Flat peg, FSH, LH, ACTH, TSH, prolactin, endorphins, and growth hormones. Flat peg, FSH, LH, ACTH, TSH, PRL, endorphins, growth hormones. Flat peg. Fill in the missing items: nasal, cavities, pharynx, larynx, trachea, bronchi, bronchioles, alveoli. About the missing item: blood pathway, right atrium, tricuspid valve, right ventricle, pulmonary valve, pulmonary artery, vein, lungs, pulmonary vein, left atrium, mitral valve, left ventricle, aortic valve, aorta. Arteries, arterioles, capillary vein, venules, veins, vena cava, right atrium. Yeah. The liver synthesizes bile, albumin, and clotting factors. Hydrostatic pressure. Depletion occurs when Na plus flows in. At the chooses whether or not to divide. G1 checkpoint. The cell chooses whether or not to divide and is in charge by V53. K plus leads the cell to leak channels and voltage-gated potassium channels. At the checkpoint, the cell check of DNA is a G2 checkpoint. right before or after S. The parathyroid gland primary function is to maintain the body's calcium and potassium levels. I think so. Nervous system muscular system function properly. I'll put that's hard. I'm gonna put really a lot of hard really. Give the hormones that are produced by the anterior pituitary gland. So flat peg, FSH, LH, ACTH, TSH, prolactin, endorphins, growth hormones. The oxygenated blood from the vena cava enters the right atrium of the heart. Ghrelin will increase hunger. But makes alkaline fluids. The prostate and the seminal vesicles make alkaline to help sick tract and female reproductive. It's found in the red blood cells and it carries oxygen. Hemoglobin. Says that 2 alleles from each human become separated and only 1 allele from each family pass on. Law of segregation, which is the first law. At the G1 checkpoint, cells choose not to divide, controlled by p53. So when bacterial transformation, give the blood pathway, including valves in the right atrium. Wow, that's crazy. Really want me to do this, huh? Okay, well, right atrium, tricuspid valve, right ventricle, pulmonary valve, pulmonary vein, lungs, or pulmonary artery, veins, pulmonary vein, left atrium, mitral valve, left ventricle, aortic valve, aorta, arteries, arterioles, capillary beds, venules, vein, the vena cava, then goes to right atrium. Right atrium, tricuspid valve, right atrium, pulmonary valve, pulmonary artery, lungs, pulmonary vein, left atrium, mitral valve, left aortic valve, aorta, arteries, arterioles, capillary venules, vein, vena cava, right atrium. Cool. The is the first part of the large intestine and is outpocketing except fluid from the small intestine, the cecum. Is when the membrane potential dips below the resting membrane potential. That's called hyperpolarization. Cool. Thick things only found in the palm of our hands and the sole of our feet. Hardy-Weinberg equation. I have no idea what this is. Homozygous dominant, heterozygous, and homozygous recessive. P squared plus 2pq plus q squared. Homozygous, heterozygous, homozygous recessive. Okay. Give it 2 layers of the dermis. We have the papillary layer and the reticular layer. Papillary on top, reticular on the bottom. Is a hollow tube that connects the larynx to the bronchi of the lungs, so the windpipe, trachea. The single cell amino, the amino acid glutamine, is replaced by valine, which causes the clumping. The transfer of antibodies from injury is considered passive immunity. Passive immunity. In cell cycle phase, cell grow and make organelles. G1, G2. G2, I guess. A study that looks at the interaction between genetic and environmental events, looking at gene-environment interaction. Not epigenetics, gene-environment interaction. The GI tract originates from the endoderm. White blood cells are known as leukocytes. Retrovirus are single-stranded RNA viruses. During muscle contraction, calcium 2 binds to troponin, causing a shift in tropomyosin and exposure to the myosin binding site on the actin filaments. So myosin binding sites covered by tropomyosin. Myosin binds to troponin, which releases it to expose the myosin binding sites on the actin filament. And then the myosin binding sites. Myosin binding on the actin filament. Myosin binding sites expose on the actin filament. Okay. Hardy-Weinberg. P squared plus 2pq plus q squared. Homozygous, heterozygous, homozygous recessive. Type of microsome is it obligate anaerobes? I said it looks at interaction between gene-environment interaction, not epigenetics. If I'm missing term, blood pathway, mitral valve, left ventricle. Aldosterone increases salt reabsorption, which increases osmolarity in the blood. Yeah, it raises blood pressure. Our bacteria uses Hill sheet to inject DNA and RNA. Bacteriophages. The valve between right atrium and right ventricle, tricuspid valve. In mitosis phase, chromosomes condense, their nuclear membrane forms, and cytokinesis occurs. In telophase, free nerve endings can detect temperature, mechanical stimuli, or pain. The first has small intestine inside, but majority of the chemical digestion. Duodenum. During muscle contraction, calcium 2 binds to troponin, causing shift in tropomyosin exposure to the myosin binding sites on the actin filaments. Myosin are covered by troponin initially, then troponin will bind to calcium, and then myosin, these sites here get exposed. The principal site of the conversion of tyrosine into catecholamines, adrenal cortex, adrenal medulla. So in your center, adrenal gland surrounded by adrenal cortex. Tyrosine to catecholamines. Interphase includes G1, G2S, anterior pituitary, stress growth hormone, lactation. Primary female sex hormone leads to development of secondary estrogen. Estrogen also maintains or establishes the endometrium secreted from the ovaries. Muscle contraction begins at neuromuscular junction, where the efferent neuron releases acetylcholine, which binds to receptors on the sarcolemma, causing depolarization. On the sarcolemma, ACE attached to receptor on the muscle cell plasma membrane. Vitamin K, A, D, E, they're fat soluble, and what else do we have to know about them? Absorbed by lacteals in the villi. So chromosome inversion, in which a segment of DNA is swapped with a segment of another. I think it's called translocation. Yeah, it's kind of confusing. Inversion, which is swapped with a chromosome. Physiotype, what was that? In muscles, is what add a phosphate group to ADP, forming creatine phosphate. Activate cytotoxic T cells. Macroattack or they stimulate B cells to secrete antibody helper T cells. Binding to an antigen B cell receptor. It can bind. Helper T cells signal it. Stimulate B cells to secrete antibodies. Become plasma cell. Releases antibody. I see. Okay, so secrete antibodies. Cool. Is measured of volume being air as a spirometer. Recombination frequency. Extensor plantar reflex or the Babinski reflex. Arachidonic acid pathway. How the fuck did I remember that? Is the chief structural unit of the compact cortical bone, osteon. Structural unit of the compact bone. Bones on the cortical bone and the dense material create much of the hard bone. Compact bone is known as cortical bone. It's very hard structure to the skeleton. Hormones. Prolactin supplies milk production secreted from the anterior pituitary. Liver. Flat peg, FSH, LH, ACTH, TSH, prolactin, endorphins, growth hormones. Left atrium, mitral valve at the G1 checkpoint, controlled by P53. Ghrelin will increase hunger, as well as membrane potential hyperpolarization. So goes to make G2. Hemoglobin. I'll do it later. Leukocytes. Passive immunity. B squared plus 2PQ plus Q squared equals 1. Homozygous, homozygous. Adrenal medulla. Principal conversion of tyrosine to catecholamines. I'll say those between genetic and gene environment interaction. Calcium 2 will bind to troponin, causing a shift in tropomyosin. and exposure to the myosin binder on the actin filaments. Cool. Let's jump to. I don't know if I want to do that yet. I'm gonna do Gen Chem. Gotta go through physics, huh? Body temperature is approximately 37 degrees Celsius. Van der Waals as far as the general term that includes dipole forces and non-dispersion forces. Ion bonds have a delta En that is greater than 2.5, 1.7. KSP is the equilibrium constant for reaction concerns. KSP equals products. Yeah. Phase change from a liquid to a solid. Is it vapor fusion? Freezing. It's a special type of homogeneous mixture composed of two more substances. Solution. Orbits that are farther away from the nucleus have increased energy. Yeah, orbits are farther away. If a reaction has a positive delta H and negative delta S, then it will be non-spontaneous at all temperatures. It's a chemical equation for a reaction which lists only those species participating in the reaction. Net ionic does not include spectra. It's a chemical equation for a reaction which lists only the species participating in the reaction. Net ionic. pH plus pOH equals 14. Label the phase in the diagram. This is solid, liquid, gas. Solid, liquid, gas. Ion bonds dilation is greater than 1.7, in which the density of a gas equals the density of a liquid. Zinc supercritical. The orbital hybridization atom with 3 electron groups, orbital hybridization, is sp2. O2 minus is insoluble, except with Na plus. Yeah, I didn't really know that. As a phase change from liquid to solid, freezing. Greater number of bonds, the higher the bond strength and the shorter the bond. The electron geometry tetrahedral. Elements group labeled that. These are transition metals. Concentration of OH minus equals P 10 to the power of minus POH. An electrochemical cell, a cathode attracts an electrochemical cell. So side of reduction for sure. I think it attracts cations. Reduction cation. Yeah, this is the opposite. Which one attracts which? Cathode attracts cations. It's different. Which reaction? Okay, net ionic equation only lists those species participating in the reaction. Those are the halogens. H2O molecules bent because the lone pairs repel the hydrogens and causes for a bent shape. Cl minus, Br minus, and iron minus are soluble. Or any free element or diatomic species has an oxidation number of 0. The azimuthal quantum number for this is 0, 1, 2. D orbital, yeah. As measured relative amounts of products in reaction at a given time, the reaction quotient. Up here looks in pure solids, of course. In a 1 molar equation, normality can be thought of the concentration times the parts at which it can react. Number of protons of a molecule of an acid can release in proton. Normality is 2. Yeah. The graph above shows a titration curve of that is a strong. That's a weak acid with a strong base. What's the periodic trend of electron affinity? Oh, noble gases don't have electron affinity, basically. Okay. The common ion causes volatility to decrease when adding like ions because it shifts. In element notation, Z is the atomic number, so number of protons. ln of A, this is a first order reaction. And delta G reaction would be spontaneous. Our large organized crystalline lattices. Those are, I don't know what those are called. Non-metals. Forces are temporary attractive forces created by temporary derivatives induced by dipole long dispersion forces. At the point in the phase diagram where all three phases exist is known as a triple point. The azimuth for this orbital is 1 p orbital. A neutralization reaction is when an acid and base react to form equal amounts of conjugate, water, and salt. It's a number that releases the rate of a chemical reaction to concentration. Rate, or K. So rate equals K times concentration of whatever you're looking at times to explain the rate order. I'll do it again, actually. What is the periodic trend for electron affinity? Increases similar to electronegativity, but the the noble gases actually have 0 electron affinity because it takes a lot of energy to, you can't really rip out, or electron affinity takes a lot of energy to rip out electrons from them because they're so stable. The element and group labeled with that are nonmetals. When in compound, group 7A metals has an oxidation state of 1. Oh, -1. Neutralization reaction is when an acid base react to form salt and water. If QSP is KSP, then the solution is saturated at equilibrium, so no precipitate will form. So QSP is greater than, equal to. It's the weighted average of a mass. Atomic weight is the weighted average of mass. This is percent abundance times the mass plus other percent abundance times that mass. Is the number of moles of a substance that can be dissolved per liter of solution before it becomes saturated. Is it molarity? Molar solubility is the number of moles of a substance it's so easy. Strong acid bases dissociate completely. The orbital hybridization of an atom with 6 electron groups. It's like sp3d2. -1. E of the cell. E of cell equals E cathode minus E anode. Electron mode is source. Thermodynamic products are lower in free energy compared to kinetic products, and they are more stable. QSP and saturated equal to KSP. According to orbits, electron orbits, and a Bohr model, there's a charge given to an individual element within a molecule. Formal charge. Strong acids have weak conjugates. Is the attractive positive charge of a nuclear proton acting on a valence star. Z effective, which is always lower than the actual number of Z. Some moles of substance can be dissolved per liter of solution before molar solubility. Let's say the system will shift the applied stress. You can form delta H heat of formation. Delta H equals N times sum of heat of formation of products minus N times sum of heat of formation of reactants. S2 minus is insoluble. What is the periodic trend for ionization energy? Yep. Oh, I didn't really get that. Titration of a polyvalent acid or base shows multiple different equivalent points. When choosing a titration, you want to select a nicotine color in a range close to your equivalence point. The electron geometry in an atom with 6 electron groups is octahedral. Elements labeled with the are known as rare earth metals. Galvanic cells houses spontaneous reactions. Not in true. It's electron affinity, ionization energy. Bonds are formed by head-on overlapping between atomic orbitals, sigma bonds. A blank has a middle ion in the center with a number of other molecules. This is called a. It's like a ion. What was it called? Ligand or something? Complex ion. Ionization energy. Imbalance rebucks in a basic solution. Oof. They actually want me to do this, huh? Balance the following above redox reaction in a basic solution. There is no way I can do this right now. Add numbers of OH groups as there are H plus presents on both sides of the equation. 3 CO2 minus plus CO2 plus 14 OH, 14 OH minus. Yields 6 CO2 plus 2 COR. So you first balance adding OH groups as there are H plus presents on both sides of the equation. Yeah, I can't do that. The elements within the group labeled blank are known as rare earth metals. Is the amount of energy required to move an electron. Ionization energy. Orbits that are farther away have increased energy. A blank has a metal ion, complex ion. And 37. Okay, why soluble? It's insoluble. For first order reaction, rate law equals rate equals K times A. Integrate rate law, I have no idea. A naught A equals A naught times A equals A naught times E minus KT. Integrated rate law. A naught times E minus KT. Ion box of delta N is greater than 1.7. The sum of the oxygen atom in a neutral compound. Temperature goes up, rate constant will go up, and reaction speed goes up based on rate equal or K equals AE minus EA over RT. The chemical reaction only the species ionic equation. Solid liquid gas. Balancing above reaction. Basically, I'm not gonna do that yet. Fluid is one in which density of a gas equals density of a liquid. Supercritical fluid shows all the ion present in a reaction, including spectator ions. Complete ionic equation. The element labeled with bond are known as halogens. O2 minus is insoluble. Gives a gift-free energy for equation uses KEQ. For KEQ, it's KEQ delta G equals minus RT ln KEQ. For the fifth order reaction, first order, you have rate equals Ka. Integrate law, concentration of A equals concentration of A naught times E minus KT. CO minus, Br minus, and R minus are all soluble. Those are the transition metals. Freezing. Basic buffer is a mixture of a weak acid and conjugate base. A weak base and conjugate salt. Nope. Specific acids are capable of losing more than one polyprotic acids. Electrochemicals are a cathode attracts cations and are always site of reduction. Zoom into Z equals 2D. D shows all the ion present in the complete ionic equation. Number of atoms. Molecular formula shows the exact number of atoms of each element. pKw equals 1 times 10 or 14 at 25 degrees Celsius. Table would assign positive or negative for each type of electrochemical cell. Concentration cell, I've never seen that before actually. Galvanic cell, either cell is positive, so it's spontaneous, and either cell is negative, positive. Concentration is 0, 0. I see. Okay. Phase changes from solid liquid gases are endothermic. A basic buffer is a weak base and its conjugate salt. Number of times it can react or number of protons the acid can donate. Times molarity is a related rate chemical reaction. So rate laws, rate equals K times concentration of A times concentration of B with the order with respect to A. Total order equals the exponents add together. Nope. Z is the atomic number, so number of protons. And the point in phase where all three phases is called the triple point. Molecular formula, derivative of an empirical formula. 3 electron groups is called trigonal planar. Universal litmus paper turns purple in acids and blue in alkali. Red and yellow, orange, yellow in acid, green in neutral solutions, and blue, purple in alkaline. Element in a group labeled black are those are the what are they called? Metalloids. Galvanic cells always have a positive EL, negative delta G. Electrolytic cells have a negative E of cell, positive delta G. Concentration is 0, E of cell, 0 delta G. Spontaneous. Non-metals. 0S. E of sigma minus NF E of the cell. Oh wait, that's the other one. E reaction of the cell. RTNF. On standard conditions, so E of the cell equals E naught of the cell minus RTNF ln Q. Yeah, no. Not yet, actually. Electron affinity, increasing electron affinity for noble gases is 0, however. Neutralized reactions when acid base form water and salt. Red in acids, green in neutral solution, purple in alkaline. Strong acids dissociate completely. First order. Oh, fuck. Second order. Since it's impossible to know the momentum. Heisenberg uncertainty principle. On sources the weakest, dipoles next, hydrogen bonds strongest. Non-spontaneous reactions. Na plus are always soluble. K plus, NH4, NO3 minus. Quantum number is a principal quantum number. N is when gives electrons energy level. Our weak acid bases display different colors in pronated or depronated form. Indicators. Nope. What is the prediction for effective nuclear charge? Is the reverse. Oh, just kidding. It's increasing that way. E of the cell equals E naught of the cell minus NF RT ln Q. RT NF ln Q. If reaction is negative, it's going to be non-spontaneous. Or spontaneous at low temperatures. Yeah. There's a number of moles of substance that can be dissolved poorly or solution before the solution becomes saturated. More solubility. According to Bohr model, electron orbit, the nucleus in orbit, size energy. Group 7A mod oxygen state of -1. H plus equals 10 minus pH. Planck's constant equals -34 joules times seconds. We got some colors and indicators. I think it's called the Rutherford model. Strong acid and bases have weak conjugates. Nope. What is production for effective nuclear charge? Increase left to right. Thermodynamic products are lower in free energy and more stable. QSP saturated numbers equal. E of a cell equals E naught of a cell minus RT NF ln Q. Delta H equals delta H products minus delta H reactants. The endpoint of a titration is when there's a color change, when there's enough base that reacts with all the acid. The graph shows the titration of a strong acid with a weak base. Pauli exclusion principle. Number of electrons is 2L plus 2, I think. Or, no, 4L plus 2. Yeah, because D has 10 electrons. Nope. What is the periodic trend for ionization energy? The periodic trend for ionization energy. Increasing. Delta G naught equals minus RT ln K. Q, where delta G equals delta G naught plus RT ln Q. QSP is the reaction quotient for reaction in of solid, not at equilibrium. And choosing a titration, you want to look at negative equilibrium close to your equivalence point. Let's measure how much energy entropy. It's the amount of energy required to move an electron, ionization energy. The element group labeled black are rare earth metals. Nope. Complex ion bound by coordinate covalent bonds. Nope. Sum of oxygen 0. Nope. Complete ionic equation. Nope. O2 minus is insoluble except with Na plus, K plus, SR2, Ba plus, 2 plus. Nope. A basic buffer is a weak base in its salt conjugate. Are specific acids that are capable of losing more than one single polyprotic acids. Reverse rate law equals rate equals K times A. Integrate law equals concentration of A equals concentration of A naught times E to the power of minus KT. Nope. Molecular formula derivative of an empirical formula by some n. E of the cell for a galvanic cell is positive, delta G is negative. Electrical cell is positive, negative, 0, 0. Nope. Universal turns red, green, purple. Hydrogen bonds, I put they're just reversed. That's second order, because 1 over A. Nope. The Rutherford model. Regression of negative delta H will be spontaneous at low temperatures. And plus are always soluble. Balanced redox reaction in basic solution. Affecting nuclear charge increases left to right. Weak acid and bases that display different colors in protonated and deprotonated forms. Indicators. E of the cell equals E naught of the cell minus RT NF ln Q. That's it. Cool. We'll leave it at that. And so you got organic chemistry left, physics and math, and we got biochem before the end of today. So I'm gonna take a break, and I'll be back later.